Hey, welcome back to the State of Love and Trust. It's episode 286, and this week we welcome to the show filmmaker Amy Berg. We're talking about her new documentary called It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley. Woo! What a film, what an artist, and what a director. Oh, and we also get into what her next project is going to be. Another fabulous singer, songwriter, guitarist. Who could that be? It's all next on the State of Love and Trust.
Long enough for the clouds to fly me away. Oh, it's not.
Hey, I'm Mike McCready from Pearl Jam.
Hey kids, this is Mark Arm from Mudhoney.
I'm Kevin Martin from Candlebox.
Hi, I'm Dave Cruzen.
I'm Tim Montana.
Hey, I'm James Joseph from James and the Cold Gun.
I am Matt Vaughn from SST Records.
This is Richard Stuverud. And this is the State of Love and Trust.
The State of Love and Trust.
The State of Love and Trust.
Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. Feed the algorithm.
Lives open and chest. Look, my watch be clear.
Welcome to another episode of the State of Love and Trust. It's a Pearl Jam podcast, and one of your two hosts, Jason Kerepesi, and alongside me, as always, is
Paul Ghiglieri.
Paul. Very excited today. We are talking with a fabulous filmmaker who's put out so many great pieces of work over the years, but this year, It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley. Wow.
Very excited to be honoring this project and the work of a fantastic artist who, and I'm very, very thrilled to say, is becoming widely embraced decades after his passing. So it's so fun and wonderful to see an artist who I think was always well regarded become even more prolific in a day and age that is just saturated with, social media and self-promotion. And it's good to see good music still alive.
And resonating, yes. Before we get to Amy, a few bits of housekeeping to get through. Of course, if you're here on YouTube, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications. And if listening only, Paul Ghiglieri.
Well, you're going to rate, you're going to review, and you're going to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Feed that algorithm. 'Tis the season to be merry and well fed. So please feed it because we need it.
Absolutely. And if you're interested in helping out the show, we've got links below: the Pod Shop, Patreon, the Patreon giveaway for the month of December, because there's always a giveaway for a random patron. This month, Paul, it's the fabulous book, The Uncool by Cameron Crowe, his memoir. So this could be yours if you're a patron here in December. And if you want to donate to our fabulous nonprofit of the month, which is EB Research, you're getting the Eddie Vedder pack. You're getting the Ohana Eddie Vedder poster from this year, and the stickers and pins that came along with it. The poster is packed away.
Stickers and pins galore. How about that?
Oh, yes, there they are. You love it. So this could all be yours if you donate the most money to EB Research. The QR code was on your screen a moment ago. There's links below. So all that great stuff is there for you to help here in the month of December. So without further ado, let's get to our guest this week. It is filmmaker Amy Berg. This week's guest is an award-winning filmmaker who's directed such inspired work as The Case Against Adnan Syed and the thrilling documentary West of Memphis, a story that influenced me greatly growing up. Her latest project is the critically acclaimed It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley, which has launched just a couple days ago on HBO internationally. Welcome to the show, filmmaker Amy Berg.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's actually not internationally. It's just in North America.
Like I said, domestically.
Domestically, North American. Yes, long.
I'll correct myself in post. No one will know.
After the title of this film, It's Never Over. That is not the last stop, HBO. We now have a lot of territories that we'll be hitting right after the new year. So
outstanding news.
Yeah,
good tease for all of our international audience out there. I know we have a lot of people in Europe and Australia, so stay tuned, gang.
Yeah. Well, it's welcome, first of all. It's lovely to have you on.
Thank you both. Nice to meet you.
First things first, congratulations on the film. Audiences and critics are loving it. It's like 97 and 98% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. which is a hard thing to do. And I have to ask out of the gate, like, did you have any idea while making the film that the reaction was going to be like this overwhelmingly strong across everywhere?
Well, I didn't predict it, but I had hoped that
Manifest.
I manifested it. No, I mean, we spent a lot of time on the edit because I really wanted it to. There was a directive for me that I wanted to be able to reach people who knew who Jeff Buckley was and people who had never heard him before, and so I wanted to make it, entertaining in that way where you can kind of go into this world and stay with it, and very immersive. So it's a dream that it turned out this way, but for sure I had hoped for audiences to love it.
You've been making the rounds now for weeks talking about this documentary. So again, thank you obviously for choosing some time to spend with us. One of those interviews that we came across was with our friend Kyle Meredith over at WAFBK in Louisville. So right out of the gate, he mentioned that you've been discussing this project with Jeff's mom, Mary Ghiglieri, since 2009. And you mentioned the word trust. And I want to focus on that word for a second here, considering how sensitive this story is to Mary and letting someone else in to tell it correctly. How did you ultimately win her over and get her to buy into this vision of yours?
Well, I think that it was just the amount of time that had passed. I mean, it was at least 10 years before she said yes to me. It was about 10 years. And I just kept coming back to her after every film. Every film I made, I would go back to Mary and ask her if she was ready yet. But I think that also she was just ready in general. Like at this point in her life, she was just ready to do it.
Yeah, I look at this film as it's very complex and nuanced, at least from a storytelling perspective, where you got to balance celebrating his legacy almost as like this mythic like artist, but you're also honoring him as like a complex regular person. How did you approach that balance, and what aspects of filmmaking did you lean on to help kind of tell the story this way?
Well, I've mostly focused on his story for like the first 2/3 of this because I like to tell emotional stories, and his was so emotional. And as we got into the nuance of his story, it became kind of obvious. The songs started to fall into place, but it took the work of just finding the story, first. And since Jeff really didn't have much of a separation between his life and his art, that's how it did kind of fall into place.
Amy, so much of Jeff's relationship with his mother is conveyed through the voicemails that he left her. You juxtapose how he speaks about women with what we're hearing from those marching for women's rights under the current presidency. And you rightly point out that Jeff's attitude toward gender equality in the 90s was pretty rare. Now, we've spoken on this show at least a lot about Chris Cornell, about Eddie Vedder. They too were very outspoken about women's rights in the 90s. Eddie still is, and how it's ingrained in their music. Not to say that correlation equals causation, but what do you make of an artist like Jeff who seemed to have a more rounded perspective on life and how it impacted the music that he made?
Yeah, I mean, this is such an important theme, and I appreciate you bringing it up in this conversation. I 2019, when I got the archive and I started to go through it, I was marching on the streets. That was the third year of Donald Trump's first presidency, and that was when the Me Too movement was just really taking off. And I was so pleasantly surprised to see in Jeff's words and, the language he used in his interviews that he was a feminist. So the timing of the universe of Mary saying yes, and that being the social, cultural norm at the time, and Jeff having that reference point for me from back in the 90s, it was surprising, but not surprising, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because he was a feminist before it was cool to be a feminist. As you guys talk to everybody about this era, so I'm sure that you're very versed in like how kind of, I don't want to say, well, I guess I have to say misogynistic and like just aggressive the scene was in the 90s. And so Jeff, I think, was kind of that perfect bridge for artists like Kurt Cobain and Chris Cornell and Eddie Vedder, because Jeff sang from a very kind of masculine, feminine way. He sang,
Right.
he sang with this huge range, and he embraced it instead of running away from it. And I think a lot of the grunge artists attempted that as well. Although the musical style was a little bit harder than like the Grace album, it was still there,
Yeah.
But Jeff just wasn't afraid of it. He just like grabbed it,
It's weird too, because you've got that grunge movement and Jeff specifically kind of sandwiched between two very, alpha male trad, in the late 80s, you have the whole hair metal scene, which is very much that way. And then you have the late 90s with like your Corns and your Limp Bizkits, and it's like that again in another way, and just aggression. And to be sandwiched between those two cultures, or zeitgeist, if you will, that's an interesting thing to see that come out. And then we didn't get to see him, juxtapose his own way of songwriting in his own life beyond into that era. But it was such a rare thing to see. How much pressure is it on somebody like him to be different, to voice those kind of concerns?
I mean, this is where I think it is kind of personal. And I reference myself because that's the only personal person I know, obviously. But like, I think that I did interview a lot of people about what you're talking about. And for me, as a person who was going out to see all, Nirvana at their first show in LA and Soundgarden, and I was out in that scene, hearing Grace gave me a breath of fresh air because it allowed me to feel. And I think that was what was happening in the scene that you're referencing. And I spoke to some of the more like, I don't know I can't remember the name of this, some kind of punk name. There was a sub category of punk in the East Village at that time, some like grunge core or something like that, I think. And I spoke to some artists in that scene, and they said the same thing as well. They said like Jeff just had this way of like opening everybody up and bringing people together. And no matter where you came from, there was no denying that he had that thing, that he struck a nerve, I guess.
We're talking a little bit here about Jeff's relationship with his mother. And you mentioned how there's an aspect of this project that's deeply personal to you. You have a son, 27, right? Okay. So, personal question. Did any part of this documentary and the journey to create it influence how you looked at your own relationship with your son, or vice versa?
I mean, for sure. I think that this story touched a lot of personal roots for me because I was a single mom and I understood the struggle, and I know how much Jeff loved his mom, and for sure that was a connection with us. But it's just, this story has like a universal theme to it that people can relate to. I just leaned in on my own personal references to try to tell the story as best as possible, but I wouldn't say that there were a ton of overlapping themes in my life with Mary, but I think I could just relate to her because I was a single mother.
So is there like an added maybe emotional congruence that only a female director can have that has a son to tell this story? I mean, maybe not, but
Well, I mean, it's the way I chose to tell the story. I love that. Yeah, no, I mean, maybe I'm trying to like open things up because there are so many incredibly emotional male storytellers. So I don't want to like think that there's a specific category that only a female director could capture. But this particular story was the way I wanted to tell it. It was in the original treatment. I said I wanted to tell Jeff Buckley's story through the women who knew him the most and the best. And that was a slant, and I embraced it in order to tell the story the way I told it. But, you could go about that a lot of other ways as well. Because Jeff was like, he had a lot of lives in his short life.
I think it was an appropriate lens, especially when you consider his inclination towards feminism. I think that perspective, that viewpoint to tell his story is unique in that regard. And I think it adds something very original and authentic to the story that may not have been told otherwise. So,
right. Thank you. And it was the feminism and like the fluidity that were the two things that I thought made Jeff very relevant today. And so I wanted to make sure I leaned on those aspects of his character.
I want to read a few quotes from the movie from Jeff, just to kind of get your reaction to them. He said, "Without ordinary life, there is no art." And Jeff mentions his admiration for what he calls ordinary life a lot in this film. Why do you think he was obsessed with that? And what does that quote mean to you?
Well, when he said that, he was actually speaking about Chris Cornell and Susan Silver and their marriage at the time. I think Jeff was seeking, he was trying to find the balance between his performer touring life and his family, what it was going to look like. And he eventually ended up in Memphis because he had a very close relationship with Dave Schaus and Tammy Schaus, Dave from the Grifters. So I think that was another family that spoke to him as a working family relationship for a musician. That said, he was so early in his musical career and he had been touring for almost 3 years. And I don't think he knew what ordinary life meant for him yet. And he was just trying to sort through that.
So it was aspirational in a sense.
It was aspirational, and he was just looking for references in a way.
Do you think he was desperately looking for references? Because, the no dad in the picture figure that looms large across this film as well.
I mean, I don't know if he was desperately looking for that. I think that being in Memphis was the first time he had a chance to just chill without all the noise of New York and all the demands of being, a newly famous singer-songwriter. I think it just gave him some time to reflect. And he had this incredible friendship with Tammy, who offered him space to just do that.
Let's circle back to Jeff's relationship with his father. He seemed to have a very complicated relationship with his father, and perhaps wrestled with the idea of who his father was and perhaps what he thought his father should be. So here's a quote. I'm curious about this exchange. Interviewer asks him, "What do you think you inherited from your father?" Jeff replies, "People who remember my father."
Yeah. And he looks at the camera at that moment. He really is.
And it's over.
Over, yeah. So what I noticed when I began going through this archive was that Jeff would get very visibly disturbed when he was introduced as Tim Buckley's son. Rightfully so, because the son role, the father role has a certain definition that Jeff obviously didn't receive the benefits of. So it would change his whole mood. There was this one interview that I didn't end up including in the film, but there was this moment where one of his managers was with him in a taxi cab in London, and they were driving to an interview, and they were in London traffic, and they had the radio station on, and the host kept saying, "Well, Jeff, Tim Buckley's son is on his way here, but he's not here yet." And apparently this really brought Jeff down, so that by the time he got to the radio station, he was just distressed and didn't really want to connect with this host at all. And that was kind of a theme in his life, especially his touring life. So that was the blast of, I don't want to be connected with this. But the other side of it, as you were just suggesting, he was wrestling with it. Well, he was, he would buy the CD, the tapes and listen to them. He would then destroy them or throw them away. He would research it as much as he could, and then he would get away from it. So I think that it was constantly baiting him. And then there was also just something that I've noticed with a lot of men that I know, that if your father dies young, that there's that marker of, am I going to outlive my father? And so when he actually did turn 28, Rebecca made him that cake, and it was like a big thing that he made it to his 28th birthday. And I think there was a certain amount of freedom that came from that, even though he only lived, not even 2 years later than that.
You talk about him getting the records, listening to him, throwing them away, and being very upset and annoyed by people asking about him, but his father as the reference point. If people hadn't have forced those kinds of reference point questions, do you think he would have been more open to finding that connection on his own terms? Was he looking to have his own timeline to make that peace, I guess? But everyone else referencing him in that way kind of slowed that down or reversed the progress?
I mean, I think Jeff seemed to be quite spiritual, and I think that he probably just was dealing with things as they were coming up. I don't think that he was like, okay, I need to get through this right now so that I can move past it, but it just kept coming at him.
Right.
And so I think that because he was very much in the moment, according to all of the people that, knew him well. So maybe just because he was young and famous, it happened sooner. Maybe that was just why it was kind of forced on him. But, your 20s are all about trying to get through whatever ails you. And he was almost there. I don't know. It's hard to say what I think might have happened next, but I think that he was definitely on a good path, and he had broken through creatively, and he was trying to make changes in his life with people that were no longer serving him. And he was just trying to find that heart and soul that he was losing connection with, I guess.
I'm going to share something with you that Jeff said, and I'm curious if you agree with it. He said, you can achieve a real state of grace by someone else's love in you. Agree or disagree?
Well, I might have agreed more when I was in my 20s, but I being seen is one of the greatest highs that one can experience. So being really seen by somebody, I think that that's there's a quadrant of that, that fills, but it can't be everything, because then I have to bring up another quote of Jeff's, which says, I'm addicted to being adored. And that then, in the 90s, that would have been a lot, that would have been a lot of pressure for a young man who was 27, 28, 29 years old to have to, well, even younger, 26 when the album came out. So that would have been a lot to live up to.
And adoration and love, there's many different forms of that. There's mother-son, there's romantic, there's father-son, friends, so it'd be interesting to know what he really meant by those two words. And as an extension of that, obviously it's not in the film, so I don't know, which is why I'm asking, but do you ever uncover anything or even like some insinuation from him that he was thinking in the future, I want to be a dad. I want to maybe correct course a little bit. Or was that not even on his radar?
I think he knew he wasn't ready, because he was really trying to wrestle with how he left the relationship with Rebecca. Because that was kind of that was like the formula for whatever he was judging himself about in terms of like being a partner and a good person. I think he had a lot of guilt around that. But I don't think that there were like inklings that he wasn't ready to be a father. He said that to somebody, I can't remember who, or if it was in his journal, but I think that it was not in the near future for him. I mean, he was just trying to sort out what his life could look like with some sense of stability. And I don't think he figured that out yet, but he was thinking about trying to buy the house in Memphis and get a car. And he was, he's trying to set his roots there.
And who knows what would have happened. Go ahead, Paul.
No, I was just curious. We talked a little bit about how Jeff's music kind of blended a variety of different genres. I'm kind of curious if we think about Jeff's music, and sometimes you hear people describe him as genre bending, but that implies perhaps that he belongs in one genre and then alters it, when perhaps in reality, maybe he belongs in many different genres all at once at the same time. So if he's the symphony of genres, when most would simply make noise attempting the same thing, do you agree with that assessment? Like in your research, consuming hours of music, footage, voicemails, what, in your opinion, allowed Jeff Buckley to find that beautiful balance of styles and influences?
I think it was his curiosity and his pain. And those two things were deep for him. I mean, he was definitely misunderstood as a young man, bullied even in high school, and his mother was, trying to make ends meet. And there was a lot of, hot tempers around him in the adult world. And so I think he was just trying to metabolize everything. And then he found that he was this kind of genius on the guitar. And he didn't know what to do with that. At first, he didn't want to be a singer. Like in his journals, he was like, stay, in the guitar lane. He didn't want to use his voice because that would mean that he was actually becoming his father, I think, in his 20-year-old brain. But then he started to get as he started writing songs, he started to get some feedback on his vocals and his singing. And it was like, he just had to work himself up to accept that.
You said curiosity, pain, genius, singer. Those words bring to mind another very talented artist from the 90s who we tragically lost all too soon. Are you up for a couple of questions about perhaps another project in the works?
Sure.
Okay. So in particular, we're talking about Chris Cornell. You mentioned you had some art of Chris Cornell in your home there, right?
Mm-hmm. I have a photo from the Lollapalooza tour in 1992.
Is this while you were working for SST Records?
Oh, they did their research. You guys did your research. No, my friend Sebastiano, who's also my cinematographer, sent this to me recently, and I just put it up. But yeah, I worked for SST. Did you guys ever interview Gary Hustwit from the Eno documentary? Do you know about that one last year? Okay, I just have to always bring a friend in on this because it's so embarrassing, but it's kind of cool now. But Gary, who also makes documentaries today, and I both worked there. And on my first day of work at SST, and I could tell you the story about how I got the job, which is crazy, but I'll just tell you this story. My first day at work was, they told me to show up at this house in Hollywood, not that far from where I am right now. And they were filming a commercial and they're like, you're the Cruise Records girl. And this is like in 1990 or something. And so this is like my first day at work. I'm like in this commercial. It's hilarious. And my friend Gary, who worked for SST, we met recently because he makes docs as well. And he was one of the guys. Anyway, he was in that commercial too. It's very embarrassing. But yes, I worked there because Soundgarden was on that label. That was like my favorite band back then. And the person who hired me, who happens to have owned the company, told me I could stay working with all these other bands that I was working with. I was booking tours for bands while I was in school. And then he changed his mind after I signed the contract, and it was very muddy. And Soundgarden left at that point to go to Sub Pop. But I was there. I was at SST Records, and I was, really excited about that moment in musical history.
So you are a Chris Cornell fan since way back.
Yeah, early 90s. Yeah.
So your perspective on this project is going to be fantastic. And I wonder, you've spoken to Alan Johannes.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, let's not talk about who I've spoken to at this point, because it's early days for that.
Okay. Fair enough.
Very early days. We haven't really started shooting yet. We're just in the research and archive phase. We've done a couple of just one-off interviews, but we're still really living in this huge archive. I mean, the Jeff Buckley archive was tiny. The Chris Cornell archive is massive. So for me, I'm just still digesting the information.
Can you already anticipate an angle on him? Because I see a lot of similarities between these two guys. Is there already an angle kind of forming in your head of how you want to approach it?
Yeah, I mean, for sure there is. I didn't know that much about Chris. I was shocked when he died because I thought he was the one that survived, and he was 52 and he looked like everything was fine. So that's what brought me to the project. But now, after spending, some time just absorbing all the material, it's so sad. In a totally different way as Jeff, because like I said, he seemed to have overcome the demons, but I guess those things just don't disappear. And specifically the Northwestern demons, there was so much death in Chris's, path.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that he ever dealt with that.
What specifically was drawing you to this project?
Well, just probably similar things. I love his music. I didn't realize what an incredible and prolific solo career he had. And it was really incredible. I don't know why I'm using the same word. So I guess I'm a little tryptophaned out from yesterday. I keep using the same words over and over in my sentences, but I like Higher Truth is incredible.
It's a great
that
record.
album is incredible, and Euphoria Morning, and even like Carry On, I think is incredible. I'm just getting into the Scream period, but I don't know. I guess I'm a storyteller, and I loved him. And my son was actually in school in Detroit when he passed, and it was another one of those deaths that really like stuck to me for months. And so I wanted to know more. And I also was kind of offended at the coverage of it right when he died, because I just remember reading that he had all of these different medications in his system and they were calling it suicide. And I was like, how do they know that it's suicide if he's like got all this stuff in his system? Like, how is that? And it was quick. It was within 24 hours of his death. They said it was suicide, which I think we saw a similar thing. I wasn't like as aware of Taylor Hawkins at the time, but it was a similar thing where he was in this other country. He was somewhere in South America, right? Wasn't he?
I want to say it was Colombia.
And like they were already releasing autopsy information, not autopsy. They were releasing information about what he had in his system. And I just know that it takes a long time. So from doing a lot of true crime. So I was upset about that and I wanted to know more. And then I heard they were looking for a director. And so I went in for it. So here I am.
Here you are.
We're thrilled to see your treatment.
I'm so excited. I can tell you, I was at the Hall of Fame induction a couple weeks back, and I was there. And I generally am not a very emotional person, but Rusty Cage started, and I started to kind of feel it kind of bubbling, and I'm like, why? It just is what it is. Like that room and those songs and the way Taylor Momsen was singing, and then Brandi Carlile, and you got Mike McCready on stage, and then Jerry Kent. I'm like, this is just the scene that kind of was part of my formative years is coming together to celebrate this. And it almost got the better of me, but thankfully I kept it cool. But
so something serendipitous too, Jason, having, prolific female artists on the stage honoring him in that way.
Exactly. Exactly. To go along with we're talking about with Chris and Jeff.
Right. And his daughter singing Fell on Black Days, which was
and Tony crushing it. Yeah. That was a really, really cool night. So I don't know when you plan on finally getting this out into the public, but I'm looking forward to it. I have one last question on Jeff. And we talked about him being bullied, and his voice and his approach was almost androgynous in ways. And he was so angelic in the way that he sang and phrased things. I almost wonder, could Jeff Buckley have existed as an artist in the social media age? Would he have been able to be strong enough to get through that? I don't know. It's a completely different world, now versus then.
Yeah. I think about this a lot because he would get so stimulated by, things that we don't even have to deal with anymore in the analog world. So I think he would have had a really tough time, and he was there for the very early days of like chat rooms, and
I remember his mom
fans' websites, and his mom went in and started speaking on his behalf. And I think that he would have, for somebody who's addicted to being adored, to have to like judge himself based on his posts, I think that would have been really tough for him.
Yeah.
Seeing comments on Instagram posts or something like that. Like I'm glad some people didn't have to deal with that.
Right.
Because you never know.
Yeah. But I think the fact that he wasn't around and that he's such a huge phenomenon now, I think there's something to that,
Yeah.
Just seems like, people are the way that TikTok works. It's like, he's like the perfect candidate to be the number one artist on TikTok, which is what happened right after the film, Grace started for the first time in 30 years and it was pretty incredible. So the kids love him.
As they should. I'm glad the kids are appreciating some good stuff and not just whatever that superficial saccharine stuff is. They're getting their roots.
Thank God. Yeah, he's a poster boy for Gen Z, so it's great.
I appreciate that not only 90s fashion is back, but at least appreciation for high quality music as well.
Thank God. I know, because like in the 90s, we used to pay nothing for what looked cool. And now they charge like $400 for like a replication of
ripped flannel.
Exactly. Or like this girl was like nightgowns. We would buy nightgowns and make them our dress or whatever. And now you see them on sale for like $400 and you're like, oh my God, it's nylon. What are they doing?
One reason why Pearl Jam's corduroy made sense then and now, because you can buy the $400 ripoff jacket of Eddie's, you know? Crazy.
Yes, crazy.
Anywho.
You guys, it was really nice to meet you. And I hope we can talk about Chris more down the line. I really do. I mean, I have something brewing in my head and I just want to take the time to like really, absorb it.
Of course. We look forward to the day.
Everything that you've touched, Amy, has been really, really, really great and thoughtfully well done. And I was watching it the other night and I'm just like, that's how you do it. And so I appreciate that you've taken it to heart as you do all these projects. And so I'm looking forward to the Chris one. But anybody who's out there who has not yet watched It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley, you can watch it if you're in the United States on HBO. You can rent it, I think, in most places, yes, online to stream.
In America, you can. In Europe, it's starting its international release in January of 26, and then it will be going to other countries. But you can't buy it in other countries right now.
Got it. Okay.
Unless you have like a VPN or something. But it's going to be everywhere in the coming months. So. And
you got, I don't know if you're allowed to, but like you got all that archival footage of all those different performances at the Chennai and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Blu-ray extras, full concerts, whatever's available.
I hope so. We're talking about that. So.
Oh, baby.
Nice.
That'd be something. Oh my God. Anyways, thank you so much for taking the time, as Paul said earlier, to chat with this little dog and pony show about such a great film. And around the holidays, everyone's busy, so we really appreciate you. Filmmaker, It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley. It's Amy Berg.
Bye, guys. Have a great long weekend.
You too, Amy. Thanks for being with us.
For sharing. Okay, bye.
Thank you again to Amy Berg for coming on the show. We record around the holidays and things are busy and we're able to find time to get all of us in the same spot at the same time. So thank you for coming on the show, Amy, and talking about this fabulous documentary, It's Never Over, Jeff Buckley.
Incredible conversation with an incredible guest. Did I just use that word too, Amy? Incredible?
You sure did.
I did because it was an incredible time. So thank you for being here, Amy, as I said before. And I hope those of you watching and listening took away something unique in terms of the value of perspective and treatment when it comes to honoring an artist's work and that person's legacy.
Absolutely. And if you're curious about the documentary and you're not in the United States, fear not. Early 2026, you will have that opportunity to stream or download or buy the physical copy. Hopefully there's some really cool extras, as we mentioned to her. But nevertheless, thank you again, Amy. And if you are interested in helping out our nonprofit of the month, EB Research, there is a link below to do that. And you'll get, like I said at the top of the show, the Eddie Vedder Ohana pack, posters, pins, and stickers. And if you want to support this show, there are links below for that as well. The Pod Shop, there it is.
Pod Shop.
There it is. So all kinds of cool stuff to help keep us going, as well as Patreon, where you could win The Uncool by Cameron Crowe just for being a patron. So all that cool stuff. We are nearing the end of 2025, Paul. Another year almost in the books, but we've got two more shows to go.
Two more festive shows.
We'll be with you next week. We've got, speaking of EBRP, we've got the director of Matter of Time, the film about EBRP, and the CEO of EBRP with us. So very excited to have those two gentlemen on to talk about this fabulous film. And we hope you join us. And until we do next week, you've been listening to or watching
The State of Love and Trust.